Hello there and welcome back to Bickington Photographic Club's YouTube tutorials channel, where we are currently focusing on Adobe Photoshop and in particular removing unwanted items from a photograph. We've used the spot healing brush to remove our power lines. We've used the patch tool to roughly remove a patch of trees, which you'll remember if you've been following along was around about here. And we're just going to use another tool to tidy this area up here across the roof of the car, and also remove our telegraph pole, which you'll remember is on the other side of the image and we'll go across to shortly. So first and foremost, how do we tidy up the roof of this car? Well, it's very easy. We use a tool called a clone stamp, and what that does, as it says there, it paints with pixels from another part of the image, and this is how it does it. If I bring my brush onto the screen and I move around, I can use the Alt key on my keyboard. Let me just zoom that back in. I didn't mean to zoom out there, I apologise. There we go. So I can use the Alt key on my keyboard to actually select the pixel space, which is effectively going to become my paintbrush. So what I do is, by pushing the Alt key around about here, what happens is I get this kind of target pop up on my screen. Now if I left click my mouse and release the Alt key, that's now become my paintbrush. Ignore what it says over here because we're using this tool. This only applies to our normal paintbrush. So now what happens is, as I bring my paintbrush down, you can see it's actually wanting to remove these bits here. So very carefully you just kind of line yourself up and you can very gently remove and tidy up these kind of misplaced edges. And if at any point you want to maybe do a reselection because you've gone too far down, then obviously it's non-destructive, so you can use your Control Z to undo certain steps, and then maybe reselect an area with your Alt key. There goes the target again. Select your target area and then bring it down and just very gently just taking the edges off there. And obviously I don't want to take too much off because I was going to wind up taking out parts of the roof which we don't want to do, in which case what we might want to do is to select the roof itself and zoom back in again, maybe just kind of work on giving a nice contour to the roof to get that back in. You can see how it's putting that line in just to give definition to the roof. And because you've got this shine, this reflection here, you're not necessarily going to have a nice hard edge all the way across the top. You can see back here it's not a hard edge, so you might want to kind of finish it off a bit like that, and then zoom back out and take a look at your work. And we can see up there obviously there's no tree. The roof looks quite nice. This is only a tutorial. If I was working on this properly, I'd probably spend a lot more time on it. I'd encourage you guys just to play with the tools and get to grips with it. So that's using the clone stamp on a relatively small scale. We're going to come across the other side of the image here and we're going to use it on a much larger scale. We're actually going to use it to take out an entire telegraph pole. And this is how we go about it. First of all, we're obviously going to zoom back into our target area. You can use the zoom tool, or again you can use the keyboard shortcuts, and I'm going to zoom into around about there, and I'm going to work on this in three different sections. I've got a cloud section, which is obviously up to around about here. And then I've got this sort of hedgerow tree section down to here. And then finally I've got this section, which is obviously the field or the grass behind. So that's how I'm going to break it down into three sections. And I've got my clone stamp tool selected, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an area which is off to one side of my telegraph pole. I can choose either side, whichever one I think is going to match in the best. In this case I'm going to choose the right hand side, and make sure your brush is entirely on the page, and then press the Alt key to bring up your target and click to select that as your tool. And you can go ahead and increase the brush size. You can see there where my brush was not entirely on the screen, I'm going to be brushing with a very harsh line. So I'm going to change that straight away. I'm not even going to attempt to paint with that. Instead, I'm going to use my Alt key again and select a different area. That's better. So now I can use that and paint it in, and you can see where I was a little bit too close to my telegraph pole, where I've got this pole coming in on this side. Well, if you just very faintly click, you can stop that from becoming a problem. And of course you can also reselect and just brush it out that way. There we go. So this is all working with my clouds, and I'm coming down, and obviously trees and clouds have a very rough area, so that's gotten rid of that quite nicely. I might want to make that look a little bit more natural by switching to my healing brush and just chucking some spots in there to blend it in a little bit. That looks quite natural. Come back to the stamp, and this time you want to use obviously the foliage from your tree, and again you don't want to be too close to the telegraph pole because you don't want to be painting another telegraph pole in while you're trying to take one out. So here I am literally just copying this tree, and in so doing the telegraph pole is disappearing. Okay, and finally I can use a smaller brush this time because I'm working in a tight area. I might even want to zoom in slightly for this one because at this stage I don't want to get rid of the people, I'm just interested in the post. So for here we're going to select an area, same as before, and giving yourself a nice straight line, you can actually paint this out. You can bring the brush size down at any point, probably a bit too far, and carry on getting rid of that. And then if you switch back to the first tool we were using, the spot removal tool, go ahead and make that smaller and just tidy bits up where you need to, like so. It may not have a perfectly even end, that's possibly slightly distracting, so we can blend that out as well. And when we zoom back out to the full image, we can see that our post is gone, our cables are gone, our tree is gone. That's our three distractions gone using a combination of our spot removal and clone tools. So there you go, that's that tutorial complete. That's Photoshop part 6 using the removal tools. I hope you've enjoyed it, I hope you've learnt a little bit, and we'll see you next time for the next tutorial. Thanks for watching. This is Bickington Photographic Club's YouTube tutorials channel.